First live panel session of National Conveyancing Week 2024, material and upfront information and the opportunity for conveyancing. The profession seems divided as to whether or not material information is an opportunity for conveyancers or whether it's a threat. Some believe that it will turn estate agents into quasi-conveyancers. I have to say that in my opinion, that is absolute nonsense. I know many estate agents and none of them want to go anywhere near becoming a quasi-conveyancer. What agents do want to do is comply with the material information guidance as easily and as professionally as possible. I also know a number of conveyancing firms who are already assisting agents in that way, and they insist that their involvement helps the home buying and selling public, the agent and the conveyancer. Now, I appreciate that material information is not the silver bullet. There is no one silver bullet, but it is a bullet. And after listening to this discussion today, I urge you to pick up the gun you are being handed and use that bullet to the best of your advantage. After you've listened to our panelists speak, you'll be able to submit questions, and I will do my best to make sure that as many as possible are dealt with. But enough from me, for now at least. Let me introduce you to our panel today, or rather, let them introduce themselves. In alphabetical order, we have Beth Rudolf.
Good morning. I'm Beth Rudolf, Director of Delivery from the Conveyancing Association and co-chair of the Home Buying and Selling Group and co-chair of the Digital Property Market Steering Group, amongst other things.
Thank you, Beth. Now over to Emma Cooke.
Hi, good morning. I'm Emma Cooke. I'm the Policy and Information Manager at the National Trading Standards Estate and Letting Agency team. I'm also the lead for the work to improve material information in property listings.
Thank you, Emma. Kate Faulkner, OBE.
Thank you. I'm Kate Faulkner, Chair of the Home Buying and Selling Group.
Thank you, Kate. Marion up next, please.
Hello, I'm Marion Ellis. I'm a Chartered Surveyor. I'm founder of Love Surveying and the Surveyor Hub, and I'm co-chair of the Property Surveyors subgroup.
And last but not least, of course, Nathan Emmerson.
So I'm Nathan Emmerson. I'm the CEO of Propertymark, the professional membership body for estate and letting agents.
Well, that was all very brief. Thank you very much. Emma, we've got another hour and 20 minutes to fill. Emma, let's start with you, please. Could you explain when the material information guidance was introduced, why it was introduced, and what the uptake has been, and how more uptake will be encouraged?
Yeah, no, there's excellent questions, Rob, to start off with. I think if I start with the why we did what we've done, I think a lot of the reasons that we've done what we've done is because we've listened to industry, really. When we've gone out to do lots of different events, such as the Propertymark events and other events around the country, a lot of agents used to come up to us and say, but what is material information? Because there is no prescribed list in the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulations, which is the basis for what we've done. And helpfully, all it says is that material information is information that the average consumer needs to know in order to make that informed transactional decision. And I think obviously that the government came back to us and said, can you answer the call for evidence to improve the home buying selling process in 2018. And so we decided to think, well, how can we do it? Because there was a lot of fall throughs. The transaction times are exceedingly long. And also the agents wanted clarity and some consistency. So to try and create that level playing field, we then developed a steering group, and it's made up now I think we're over 23 members on the steering group. And what we did is that we actually put together a list. It's a minimum list. It's not the be all and end all. I want to emphasize that it's not the only information that has to be put in a property listing, and it could be on property portals, agents' own websites, their brochures, any property particulars that they produce. We just wanted to try and see, right, well, how can we do this? How can we speed up those transaction times? How can we reduce the fall throughs? Because fall throughs can happen for a variety of reasons. People sometimes just simply change their mind because of their circumstances changing, for example. But a lot of transactions fall through because of information that comes to light further on down the line. And what we're trying to do is give all of those pieces of information, which are the nasty surprises, if you like, try and make them as clear and transparent at the point of marketing as possible. So that's probably that covers off the why we've tried to do what we've done, because again, it's just basically trying to protect consumers and safeguard those honest businesses. With regards to the guidance itself, I mean, as you know, the project itself is 3 parts or phases, A, B, and C. We announced Part A in early 2022, and Part A, that just basically covers the inescapable costs. So we're looking at price, we're looking at the tenure information, and we're looking at the council tax information. All of these are inescapable costs. It's not just about the cost of the property, it's the cost associated with living in that property. So we announced that in early 2022. And then the culmination of the work, the whole project as it's known, is November 2023. We published that on 30th of November, and we updated parts of the guidance that covered Part A. But Part B and C, they cover a lot of other information which people were eager to have. We announced Parts B and C together, basically on the feedback from agents, from data software providers, and the portals themselves. They said, please don't introduce them separately. We just want to get on. We want to be able to do the changes that we need to do. So announce them together, which we did. And those sorts of things, what we're looking at with Parts B and C is we're looking at utility information. So, the heating at the property, the water, the sewerage, parking, those sorts of things for B. And then C covers things like the building safety, accessibility information, restrictions and covenants, if you like, Part C, and flood risk, those sorts of things we've got covered in Part C. With regards to the uptake, actually we're pleasantly surprised with how it's been received. I'm really surprised because I was expecting a lot of kickback with regards to it, but I have to say agents have come up to us and said, thank you very much for giving us that clarity and consistency. Some of the things that they come back with are, we're doing what we need to do, but our counterparts are not doing what they need to do. So those conversations I'm very keen to keep up, because I'm a big believer in the fact that, yes, just because we've announced Parts A, B, and C, we need to keep that communication open, because it's how it's actually hitting the ground, how it's being adopted, what are the problems that people are encountering, and how can I, in the position that I'm in, help all those stakeholders with whatever it is that they're actually noticing. So for me, communication is absolutely crucial. And people can contact us via our website, or they can contact me directly. I'm happy to pick up conversations and have meetings to discuss those. I think with regards to the uptake itself on the portals, we ourselves as a team are monitoring property listings, and we are noticing that there are more pieces of information which are being provided by agents, which is great, absolutely great, because we started monitoring the websites over 12-18 months ago. And we have noticed absolute compatibility, I suppose, with the categories. They are actually populating them. And the portals themselves report to us on a regular basis as to those categories being populated, which is great, because the percentages that they're giving us are really, really on the up. And that's the direction I wanted to go up, not down. I think with feedback that I've had, I think agents are very frustrated with their data software providers. They are not actually doing the work quick enough, or at all, in fact, in some instances, to allow the agent to populate those categories. For whatever reason, I think the portals are starting to have more engagement at the moment with those data software providers. I think a lot of the software providers were waiting for the announcements for B and C before they even did anything. And so now they start to have that better engagement. But of course, there is no need for an agent to say, well, I just didn't have the categories available. They can use that free text description box. And that is what I urge agents to do. They have to put that in there somewhere. I think with going forward, we continue to meet as a steering group. We've recently had a steering group meeting, and that was, earlier this month. And those will progress, they will continue. I think going forward, what our plans are, we're going to fundamentally focus on consumer education. To me, consumer education is absolutely crucial to take this forward, because an educated consumer is an empowered consumer, and they need to understand the importance of what they need to know at the point of listing and why it's really important, because everything at that point of marketing can influence whether they even wish to view the property. It helps them with their budgeting. All this information is fundamental, and that is why it's important to get that consumer education up and out. We are going to be updating our infomercial. So we have got an infomercial on our website. We are going to be updating that. We're producing a shorter infomercial and then a much detailed infomercial for the consumer. So that's going to be hopefully going live within the next 1 to 2 months. We're currently working at the moment with our provider on that. We're going to be looking at, obviously, our guidance for consumers as well. And I think not only just for agents and any stakeholder, in fact, to think about just our material information guidance, we do have generic CPR's guidance, which is available on our website, and that can actually help conveyancers, surveyors. It's not just purely for the agent, and I think that's also worth bearing in mind. I do think it's really important, as I say, to keep that communication open. And we will continue to work with the portals, without a doubt, on how they are developing. What I will say with the portals is they're completely invested in this. They've spent tremendous amounts of money and time and effort trying to get this embedded. What they're at the moment, that they're actually with B&C, they are testing it at the moment, and they're hoping to have it all go live at the end of Q2. And when I say Q2, I mean calendar Q2, not financial year Q2. So hopefully by the end of June, everything for B&C will be live and they can start to be populated. And again, you know, that will cascade out for the CRM companies, the software companies. But yes, I mean, I'm very, very pleased with how it's landing. Very pleased with the communications that we have. And as I say, as a team, we're very keen to keep on reaching out and answer any questions that people have.
Okay, thanks, Emma. There's a few questions, or I think a couple of questions and a statement come up in the chat. The first one I think has been typed slightly incorrectly, so bear with me while I just try and read it to you. And I think you've touched on it. You've touched on it already. Agents are asking me, I think that means agents are telling me they can't list yet on portals are not ready. When will the portal structures be ready? I think you touched on that. So will they need to backdate B and C on the listings?
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, that's a really popular question that we're getting. So agents are asking us, do we have to go back into our old listings to update all the information? I'm hoping that is the question I think that's being asked.
That's what we're saying, yeah.
No, what we're saying is, you know, for new listings, definitely have to put this information up there. But that said, as soon as you become aware of any change in information on any of your listings, you really do need to go in and change the information, because consumers at any point looking at that property can be influenced by their information. So as soon as you're aware of any updated information, you really do need to go update that listing, your property particulars that you have in branch. With brochures, a lot of people are saying, but we've already paid and we've had them printed. We understand that. So what we're saying is, if you have got a list of people that you've already shown the property to, please update them with those that pieces of information. So I'm hoping that's answered that question.
Okay, they're actually coming thick and fast at the moment. I probably ought to read them to myself before I read them out loud in case there's anything rude coming in. But
it's fine.
The second one is I think more of a statement, but I'm not going to read all of it. Your average consumer doesn't understand what they're being presented with, and also this does not solve what is causing delays. Now, I think there's a difference between material information and upfront information. and I might be wrong, but material information, I think, is for the consumer, and they should understand that. They might understand full upfront information, which contains legal documents. They wouldn't understand that. But what's your view, Emma?
I think that that's a very good point, because consumers don't know what they need to know at the moment. And given the fact that people don't move on average very often, I think the statistic I read was on average a person moves 3 to 4 times in their lifetime. And yet, you know, when I always come back and compare it to buying a car. People buy cars all the time. And you know what questions to ask, you know what information to expect to know about that vehicle. You like to know, you know, what is it going to cost me for insurance? How many miles to the gallon does it do? All that sort of information. And I think we need to change the mindset about buying a house, because it's fundamentally the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make in your life. And the fact that you do it so infrequently makes it even more pertinent, more important. So yes, I absolutely agree that the average consumer doesn't understand, but with the work that we're going to be doing, and I know Kate might touch on this later on with the Home Buying and Selling Group's plan for consumer education as well, I think consumers will start to become empowered, and they will start asking those questions, because that is the whole point of this. They need to know the importance of the information that they are relying on to be able to make their informed decision. And at the moment, they don't quite understand it until it's too late, potentially.
Okay, I'll go on with a few more. I've got a few more minutes, I think, for you, with you, Emma. Do NTS have a date for making the guidance obligatory, or is it intended to keep it voluntary and let the market evolve naturally?
I love the word where they say voluntary or mandatory. The fact is, this is not a new piece of guidance. This is not a new concept. I mean, this has been in place since 2008. When the guidelines came in, the legislation came in, and it says quite clearly that you cannot omit material information. And it goes further to say it's not only about omitting the information, so therefore not providing it in the first place. It then goes on to do other things. It says you can't omit it, you can't hide information either. So a lot of agents say, well, it was in there. But if they've hidden it amongst all the other bits and bobs, there is potentially an offence that they've hidden that information. The other thing is, you cannot provide the information in an ambiguous manner. It has to be clear, it has to be very, very upfront, easy to understand. And also, it has to be provided in a timely manner. And bearing in mind, the transactional decision can be impacted by a person before entering into a contract, during your contract negotiations, and even after concluding that contract. If a consumer finds out information and they say, had I known about that, I would never have viewed it. I would never have actually put in an offer. I would never have bought the property. There is potentially an offence. So it's not necessarily as saying it has to be followed, because you should be doing it anyway. What we're trying to do with our guidance is to make your job much easier as an agent. That is it. You asked for clarity. You asked for consistency. We have answered that call, and we've provided the guidance. Okay,
they're still coming in, so I'm going to pick 3 or 4 more. Sorry to anybody who doesn't get their question answered, but do trading standards have any intention to introduce an obligation on the seller to provide searches up front?
What our guidance has said is if a seller or indeed the agent themselves have concerns about any aspect of their property. So for example, say an agent goes round and notices a crack in the wall, for example, you know, they can advise their client to say, you might want to get that checked out.
I think
surveyor along the line.
Referring to a local search, Emma.
Oh, right, okay. We're not advocating that, no. I mean, if they wanted to do that, they can, because as I say, there's nothing to stop them, but we weren't advocating that sort of local search, no. Okay, and no plans to do that? As I say, at the moment, no, but if they want to do that, they can, because as I say, there's other pieces of work going on, and Kate can pick that up, or Beth even, on the Home Buying Selling Group front. about their upfront information work. And again, you may have property logbooks, etc. So it may be something that is part of another stream of work, but again, they're all complementary to each other.
Okay. This is probably more for me. Why is there no current conveyancer or estate agent on the panel? Well, I chose the panel, so apologies for that. Although Beth's got conveyancing experience, as have I, and I know Nathan's got estate agent.
I was going to say, Rob, although I haven't been at the coalface for several years, I do work with Conveyancing Association members, and our executive board are coalface conveyancers. So I do get to hear exactly what is going on in the community. And
again, likewise for me, with our online forum, there's questions every day. In fact, I think I know more about conveyancing now than I did when I was actually doing conveyancing. But there are plenty of conveyancers and estate agents, I think, listening in. So please send your questions in, and like I say, we'll try and deal with them.
Can I just pick up on a question, Rob? I've just seen about NTS, by their own admission, don't have the manpower to police this.
That was my next question to you, Emma.
Is it okay?
Go on.
It's just a case of you have to be very mindful that enforcement can take many different types of enforcement. We call them interventions, and it's not just NTS that can take action. It could be the redress schemes. They will have fundamental parts actually in trying to deal with complaints about the lack of material information, as they will continue to do. They have done for a very long time, but they are continuing to do that. And we will continue to get the statistics from them about material information. But, the first port of call for any consumer is likely to be the redress scheme. So you have to be mindful of the fact. Don't just fear trading standards. You have to fear about the complaints that you could have made against you to the redress scheme. I mean, local trading standards, they obviously have the opportunity as well to take action. But the interventions, as I say, can be varied. And it could be that you just offer business advice to that particular agent. It could be that you give an informal warning. It could be a formal warning. Or ultimately, it could be prosecution. And at prosecution, we're talking up to an unlimited fine and up to 2 years in prison. So the consequences of getting it wrong can be really bad. But not only that, take into account the fact that we as a team are very unique in what we can do. And unique to our team is the ability for us to be able to issue a warning order or a prohibition order. And a prohibition order, or we call them a banning order, they are lifetime bans. And we can actually ban somebody for life from engaging in estate agency work should they commit an offence under the CPRs. It's not just about triggers, about fraud, dishonesty, violence, including sexual violence. It can be breaches of the CPRs. So yes, okay. It may be that, we have not got the power to do it, but we are working smarter. And that's what you need to remember. We work smarter. And an intervention could not necessarily be a prosecution. It becomes something else. So I would probably advocate that, don't be complacent because you think that there's not enough manpower by trading standards. Because trust me, there is plenty of people in the arena of enforcement that can actually action any complaint.
Okay, thanks. The questions are still coming in thick and fast, but some of the panelists are kindly replying to those questions online. So if you can do that, that would certainly help me. Just one more, I think, Emma, for you, and then we'll move on to Beth. It might be one for you or one for me, actually. Have any PI insurers commented on liability for law firms providing information to agents for material information? As far as I'm aware, no, they haven't. They tend to sit back and wait and see what happens before they comment. But do you know any different, Emma?
Yes, I've had a meeting with somebody who deals with the professional indemnity insurers, and it's something that we will be picking up going forward. But yes, they have reached out. And as I say, it's these conversations which I really welcome, because clearly how things land is very important to me.
Okay, great. As I say, we'll try and deal with the questions. If you don't get your question answered, email it into me. I might regret saying this, rh@boldgroup.co.uk, and I'll try and get an answer and back to you within the next 5 or 10 years at the maximum. No, as quickly as possible, obviously. So thanks for that, Emma. I don't know if anybody can hear, but there's There's a budgie in the background. I do have a budgie in the office with me. You might say, take the cage out of the office. The budgie's not in the cage, so I can't. So apologies if she's tweeting and shouldn't be. Beth. Thank you, Emma. Beth.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Beth. Right.
Yes.
Back to normality. What do you think this means for conveyancers? And what opportunities do they have, and what hurdles, perceived or otherwise, do they have to overcome?
Oh, wow. Well, the opportunities are huge. Of course, it enables us as conveyancers, and I've been a qualified conveyancer for 34 years now. Before that, I was an estate agent, so I kind of see both sides of things. But you know, what I understand is that actually, because of what we were doing previously, our proactivity was completely stymied. And so as a seller, you didn't really, acting for a seller, you didn't really feel that you could be resolving anything. But because of the guidance being published, we've now got that opportunity to identify exactly what we need to be telling sellers the average consumer would be impacted by. So this is brilliant for us because we can start solving those things before a buyer is found. As we've alluded to, the transaction times are currently at 22 weeks. Now, you know, when Rob and I started conveyancing, it was between 4 and 6 weeks. In fact, probably Rob was doing it in a week because he was, you know, so efficient. But the point being, that actually at 22 weeks, what is that doing to our profit margins? Not just for us as conveyancers, but for estate agents, mortgage brokers. You know, the pipeline turn is completely, well, I think halved because of this, if not worse. On top of that, we've got 24% of transactions. Sorry, I'm trying to remember how many transactions are falling through at the moment. The reason I'm getting confused is because back in 2023, in January 2023, it was showing that actually 28% of transactions were falling through. And this, you know, isn't just because of issues that the buyer wasn't aware of or that the lender wasn't aware of. It's because of the delay caused. So, you know, what's in it for the conveyancer? Well, actually, for us as conveyancers, it means that our transactions can go through so much more quickly. Just think about it. You cannot exchange contracts until you've got all of the searches, all of the title, all of the property information, and you've been able to get responses to additional inquiries. And of course, the buyer's got financing, and you've done your AML and ID. Well, you know, digital IDs here now, AML, open banking, all of those things are being resolved, but actually getting all of that information up front. Now, last time I was at Coalface Conveyancing, transactions that we time recorded at that point showed that with the transaction times of between 10 and 12 weeks, the sales would take the conveyancer 7 hours to get through, and purchases 10 hours. Well, now it's taking 13 hours for a sale and 16 hours for a purchase, because you've got to have all that extra progression and client management time, and, you know, really just holding things together whilst the last person in the chain gets caught up. So if you think about what that does to the conveyancer's profitability, and of course the estate agents, brokers as well, you know, that's a nightmare. So material information now tells us what information should be made available and that would impact the average consumer. Now, I'm pleased to say that the Law Society Conveyancing Handbook has been saying this for years. In there, it makes it very clear that the seller can order searches and include them in the contract pack. Of course, we've got common law, which says that the seller has to provide or that the property is sold subject to the issues with the property, and the seller has to notify the buyer of issues that might impact them. And that's the average consumer. But of course, if the buyer asks them a question about their specific intended use and enjoyment, then that will impact the seller under the Misrepresentation Act as well. So, you know, it's already there. We've got the legislation there as well. As I say, the Misrepresentation Act, the seller has to provide the information. And of course, the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulations 2008 states that the estate agent has to reveal the things that would impact the property and that would impact the average consumer's transactional decision. On top of that, we've got case law, and I think it was only 2 years ago we had the SPS Groundworks Limited case, which said that where the seller, just on response to an inquiry from the buyer as to whether the property would be good for development, the seller said, yeah, well, you know, check out this document, but yeah, I think so. Well, actually, it was clear that the seller had attempted to get planning permission themselves and been declined. So that changed their opinion into a statement of fact. And that, of course, came under the Misrepresentation Act. So we've got the case law, we've got the legislation, we've got common law. What else do we need? Well, what we need to do is get on with it. Because if, as the seller's conveyancer, we're able to act in the best interest of our client by identifying the things that will impact them, then we can also offer solutions to this. And then for the buyer's conveyancer, being able to help the client understand what it means to them and their specific intended use and enjoyment. And this is very much for those of you who've seen the Council for Licensed Conveyancers recent consultation on changes to their codes. You know, they put in there the making sure that you assess the know your customer element properly. Currently, know your customer, you know, most of us think it's about IDing, but actually it's about what their purpose is, what their vulnerabilities are, how they intend to use and enjoy the property. So as the buyer's conveyancer, we do need to be reaching out to them and saying, well, what's your intention for this property, to make sure that you give them the right advice. And let's face it, that's what we as conveyancers want to be doing. We want to be advising. We don't want to be running around the houses trying to chase up information and trying to get the searches in and trying to find out what the difference is between what the seller thinks the situation is and what the actual position is at the local authority. And that's very much where the upfront information comes in. So to be clear, the way we see upfront information, and certainly in the upfront information group of the home buying and selling group, we identified it as the things that you would need to review to be able to identify the relevant material information to that property. So it might be that once you've reviewed it, actually there isn't anything relevant because it doesn't have a smoke control, it doesn't have a tree preservation order, or in a conservation area, it doesn't have restricted covenants, or it does have planning permission, or it hasn't been altered. But that's the point. You've got to get in your searches, you've got to get in your title and any documents referred to them, and the seller's information to be able to identify what is the relevant information for that property. And unless you've got in that upfront information, then you're not going to be able to identify what is relevant, and that's where the issues start arising. There's been a lot of concern in the chat about liability. Just to be clear, liability does not change. The liability will always remain there. What changes is the risk and the amount of loss, which both go down. Because so long as you've got people checking the title, then that means that the buyer will be notified of anything that will impact their intended use and enjoyment. The lender will be notified of anything and have access to it. The valuer will be notified of it, so they'll no longer have valuations based on assumption. They'll have the information up front. So you as the conveyancer are not going to have to be providing them with information. They'll be able to see one source of truth. But if you do provide them with that information, you're not the only person providing them with it, and it's more likely that you're going to get it right, let's face it, because liability only occurs really where you get something wrong. Although we all know there's a few bits of case law that would say something different, but we'll part that. So from a liability perspective, yeah, liability does not change. However, the actual loss and the risk to you as a conveyancer plummets because all of that information is made available. And when I spoke to the Conveyancing Association members about, well, what information would be material, they couldn't actually see that there would be any material information because, well, if there was a problem, they would solve it as a conveyancer because that was what we do. So from the prospect of conveyances, yes, there's loads of things that this brings a huge opportunity. Of course, it's even a new service that you can set up for your local estate agents to be able to provide them with the material information summary. And as has been made clear, this is just a summary of information relevant to the consumer. This isn't like home information packs, which were providing them with reams of technical information, which was no use to anybody. This is about somebody reviewing it and saying what is relevant. We've also had concerns from people that, well, does this mean estate agents will become conveyancers? No. If you think about when an estate agent lets a property, they have to ensure that the landlord has a gas safety certificate, energy performance certificate, electrical test report, and yet we don't see estate agents becoming plumbers or electricians or domestic energy assessors. So it's exactly the same with this. What all it needs to be happening is for the estate agents to be saying to the seller, right, guys, you need to be instructing your conveyancer to provide us with the material information summary. And what that means is that we'll end up with the seller having option to resolve issues. So if they've got a short lease or if they've got escalating ground rent issues, hopefully the leasehold and freehold reform will solve that in future. But for now, if you've got to do a deed of variation, at least their expectations are managed, and then they can make the choice as to whether they simply market the property at a value reflective of that issue, or indeed if they want to carry out the work and therefore improve the value of the property and the amount of people that can buy it on the open market. And then, of course, for the buyer, you're able to advise them on what the information means to them and how it would impact their intended use and enjoyment. And because all of the upfront information is gathered, it means you're not chasing up all the documents. You've got it all there at once to provide reports to them. Now, the difficulty currently is that you get your instructions from the buyer, then you get the contract pack with the seller's information, then you get the search results, then you get the valuation report, and all of them have conflicting information. And you might have reported to your client, the buyer, on one thing, and then you find that actually that's changed because then the searches come in, the valuation comes in, whatever. The point is you don't have to do that with upfront information. You get it all in at once, which means that you're only reporting once to the client with the correct information and the correct advice on what it means to their intended use and enjoyment. And of course, from the lender's perspective, it means that they can basically avoid even making processing an application on a property that they will not lend on, because they can view that information through the portals and ensure that they don't waste any time on that as well, so that you're going to get the right lender, the right buyer for the right price. What could be better? Rob's gone to sleep now.
Rob is struggling listening to you, Beth, reading the questions, but also reading the answers that are being put up. I thought this was the easiest job of the lot today, but I'm not so sure about it now. A lot of the questions that I think, and some of you have replied to them already, thanks. It seems to be people think that material information, upfront information is a panacea to all ills. It's not supposed to be. It's not going to sort out source of funds yet or ever. It's not going to sort out other issues. It's built for what it's built for, and that is helping the consumer and ultimately, I hope, speeding up the transaction. There's lots of other things that need fixing. This isn't the work, one silver bullet, like I said at the outset. Somebody said,
no, Robert, and it should be noted that if people have got particular other issues, do let us know, because at the Home Buying and Selling Group, we pick them up and we talk and collaborate together, the whole of the industry, to say, look, we've got this problem. What can we do with it? What can we do to help make it resolve it? So please, if you think that there are other things that would improve it, please do tell us those as well. But this is something that we already have the legislation for, and we already have a solution for as well.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. I mean, if you look at LinkedIn and other forums, there are at least 15, 20 or more problems or perceived problems with the conveyancing process. Material information, upfront information isn't going to deal with them all, but it will hopefully deal with a number of them. Nathan, thank you for waiting and being so patient. If we can move over to you now. Are you still there, Nathan?
I am indeed. Good morning.
Oh, thank you. Hello, good morning. So bearing in mind this guidance is strictly for estate agents to follow and not really for conveyancers, how is it being received? What is the uptake like or been like? Will that increase? And do agents really want to become quasi-conveyancers?
Multi-disciplinary question there.
Yeah, I can repeat some of them if you want later. Sorry.
We'll break it down. I'm sure there's lots of chatter on the feed as well, which is, I think, probably all relevant. And let's start from the beginning from most agents. I'm going to reiterate probably something Emma said there, that it is a new journey, and it is actually now putting some meat on some bones, because we've had consumer protection regulations. And what we're trying to do now, and the whole sector's together on this, is trying to actually put something there that gives a framework for us to build on. And I think actually a lot of agents are certainly pro it. There will be people, obviously, that are a little bit hesitant. What does it mean? What do I have to do? How far do I have to go? Do we have to start training our staff to do new things? So with any change, there's always nervousness, and a lot of the comments that will come out from people will often be defensive or concerning. But actually, once you start getting under the hood of practicality, there are sticky areas in some areas, of course there are, but the majority of the information is already out there. What we're actually doing is collating it together and trying to make sure that that is in an easy format for the consumer to know. I mean, somebody said on the comment, I think Zahara mentioned, they just want their keys to get in. And, you know, it's like a new car. It's like a packet of sandwiches from the supermarket. You want to buy it. You want to eat it. You want to get in your car and drive it straight away. You want to get in your house. We're all the same thing. But when you buy that packet of sandwiches, if it's got a health warning on it and you've got a peanut allergy and it's got peanut allergy on it, you don't buy the sandwiches. You look at a different one. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to make sure that we can point people to the relevant information that may affect their decision. And somebody mentioned about being disabled, you know, that is an absolutely clear one. You know, you can have properties there which are adapted and ready. You can have properties that aren't, you know, and I think our job is to signpost people at the earliest opportunity to try and help them find the right property. And when you bear in mind at the minute, I'm going to take an operational side. For most properties, the average is 13 viewings per sale. Okay, 13 viewings per sale is about the average at the moment. So from an agent showing 13 people around a property to sell it to one person, and that's just on the sales side, regardless of the letting side, you know, there is a lot of work that's done, and people get there, oh, I didn't realise that, I'm not interested now. Had I known that, I wouldn't have viewed it. So when we're talking about the consumer right at the beginning of the journey, and I know a lot of the listeners today are at probably the rear third of the journey once the sale's been agreed. But at the beginning of the journey, you've got people that are running around viewing properties on very basic information. They're making initial decisions on probably the largest purchase in their life with very little information. We still get people today selling their houses, think they own a freehold property when they're on a leasehold. You know, that is a very real thing that happens. People buy properties and don't understand exactly what they're dealing with. Our job is to make sure that we do it. Agents should be more professional. They should be helping to take the pressure off the conveyancing process further down the line, and also making their own job. So if we can cut down the number of cancellations, if we can speed up the turnover of the properties going through, if we can take off the pressure of trying to resolve boundary issues and, you know, easements and things like that at the beginning of while the property sat on the market, that's a lot easier to resolve it then than it is under the pressure of a conveyancing, you know. And so when we're under pressure to exchange and complete, and we've got, you know, a footpath through a property that nobody discovered, that causes delays. Had we known it at the beginning, we've got a 12 to 16 week marketing period while the property's on the market before we actually get to a stage of agreeing a sale to resolve those issues. And so actually, when you put that into the whole part, it does help to smooth things down. It makes things better for people to actually be able to understand what they're buying. And somebody's mentioned about chains causing delays. Chains do cause delays, but what causes the delays in the chains in the first place? It's when you're ready to exchange contracts and a piece of information suddenly comes to light, or somebody changes their mind, or the transaction's been going so long, another property's come on the market and the buyer's swapped and gone to another property. 90% of the issues that come up with most chains falling through are down to either relationships or time-related matters when you get down to it. You know, surveys these days, you can work around those. Lenders will work with you on those. So even an adverse survey isn't an issue. But the main thing is communication, and that's the weak area in all forms of life. If this helps to speed it, And if it helps to give a framework for people to work on, and it helps us to build to a situation where people can make informed decisions before they plunge off the precipice, then I think that's a great thing. The difficult challenge is everybody adapting their working processes, understanding, probably from a conveyancer side of things, at what stage now do you need to relate to the agent or be working with the agent to get the information together? Or do we not do anything about it? In which case, will the larger corporates set up their own divisions? Absolutely. If conveyancers don't get involved, will the average estate agent set up? No. Most agents in the UK are 1 to 3 offices. They absolutely have no intention of doing that. What it does leave an opening for, though, if the conveyancing profession doesn't engage or look at how it can help to speed this up and help assist agents, it does leave a way for third-party people to come in, no different than happened in HIPS, to set up a provision to provide that information or work with agents to do it. I think for conveyancers, this is probably one of the most exciting areas, because if you're getting involved right at the beginning, you're getting involved with 100% of properties coming on the market. And we know 2/3 of those properties sell. What we also know is most properties change agents. What very few people do is change conveyancers. So if you are engaging with your local professionals and you're getting involved from day one with those agents and you're getting involved with the properties coming on the market, that's business that's going to come to the fore when it sells. And actually, how that product develops itself buys you not only a client on that conveyance, but probably everything else that follows suit. So actually, for me, if I was in conveyancing, I would see this as a business opportunity. I think it'd be absolutely exciting, and I'd be engaging to see what can I do to A, get involved at the beginning, but also B, make my job a little bit easier further down the line. So I think that's probably a little bit of how we go. Does it mean the sector's got to get a bit more professional? Absolutely. Does it mean people put a bit more thought into putting a property on the market? Correct. And does it also probably get the property owners to be a lot more honest about what it is that they're trying to, and be thoughtful about what they're actually selling? I think absolutely it will do that. I just think it's a nice, it is a difficult change, but I think it's a nice thing for the industry to be able to pull together without trading standards having to necessarily smack the big stick and make examples of people until that framework's in place. And I think the good thing is the industry has come together to put a framework in place. Our job is to now try and work out over the coming weeks and months how we best facilitate providing that information.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you see me?
No.
No. Okay. Well, for some reason, my camera's decided to pack up. I'm sure I've been hacked and somebody's done that on purpose to me. Probably one of the other groups. I won't name the group. Thanks for that, Nathan. I entirely agree that this is an opportunity for conveyancers, but I think it's a great opportunity for conveyancers, agents, surveyors, and others to work together more closely than they have done in the last, say, decade or two, like they used to back in the 20th century, I think. And we'll come back to that. Again, I'm still trying to monitor the questions, but let's move on to Marion, please. Marion, like conveyancers, surveyors are mentioned numerous times throughout the guidance as a possible source for elements of the information required. What's been the response from the surveying community to its introduction, and what has been their involvement since it was introduced?
It's a great question. And so from my experience with the thousands of different surveyors I know and work with, it ranges from, I've no idea, this doesn't affect me, I'll wait until somebody tells me what to do. But there are some firms out there who are starting to explore what a service or a product could look like, but they're very much the outliers. And when they do, then it's then hard to showcase the potential of all of this, because they then get within their own sector, a battling wave of questions about the industry, mostly about liability, claims and PI, which I know conveyancers are, are concerned about. And the thing is, there are solutions to all of this. There will be an insurance model that can cover these things, but claims are one thing and the reality of that, but then also the thought of dealing with all of these customers and the headaches and the things that come along with that. And we've got examples, how has it panned out in Scotland, for example. As surveyors, they give their work and it's shown to the public. There are measures in place. As a surveying sector, it's quite a dangerous place to be, I think, at the moment with this mixed view, given how far advanced other sectors are. I mean, we're not really having webinars and discussions on things like this. We don't have the same sort of infrastructure and support. Not that there isn't, but it's not quite the same. Organisations like RPSA have been quite involved in the home buying and selling group and vocal. So is RICS, who I know is involved in the guidance with trading standards. And the priority has been for those surveyors who are also estate agents too, because they're right in the thick of it. But the wider implications for residential surveyors and valuers, I think, can't be ignored, but so too is the context of the surveying landscape at the moment, which I think is really important. And there's a couple of things. So qualified does not mean competent. There's a range of different skills out there. How does the public know where to go, and how do they know there isn't sort of this one standard, and that brings up questions about regulation and registration. There's a massive lack of data. How many people get a survey? What do homeowners want from a survey? What do they need, appreciate? And what information really helps them? Is it the stress, the money saving? There's no claims or complaints data sources. What are surveyors getting sued for? Are there common patterns? What's being done about that? So this what affects a transactional decision for the consumer. Does the roof leak? Is there subsidence? Is there dampness? Yes, those things will massively affect it. But and I've had quite many years dealing with complaints and claims. When people complain, they complain about everything. And the number of times they will say, well, I would never have bought that house had I known it had a faulty tap, or whatever, they will throw those things in, and we've got to find ways to deal with it. And gathering all that data is vital, particularly, in the majority of the UK, numbers 35 to 40%, 5% of the housing stock here is older or period. So there's always going to be something that's not quite right. Another issue which may resonate with conveyancing is fees for surveys. Some of them are so low, you wonder whether the buyer will be better off sourcing some kind of insurance policy instead of having a really basic survey. And that's been explored in the past, I know, by some corporates. And so we've, so I think you call them sort of, somebody in the comments called them factory work. We have sort of exactly the similar thing, and that's one of the challenges of minimum standards. Is that there's always somebody out there who'll work to the minimum. And the other wider thing that I think needs to come in, which valuation has been mentioned, is mortgage lending and valuation accuracy. The RICS valuation property conference was on last week, and there they were talking about combination of AVMs, AIs, evaluation sort of tolerance of 2%, of how accurate they can be, and that's great. So you might be thinking, well, why on earth do I need a valuer? But and so you're right now you've got lenders who are using AVM and technology more than 50%, of their portfolio. Right now, a lender, if they wanted to, and they could get parts of the process to work, can pre-approve a property for mortgage lending. They just need to find the right, applicant, the right consumer. So it's quite advanced in many ways. And you may be thinking, well, why focus on whether a survey is needed? And I think it's a really valid point. Material information and upfront information are slightly different things. And we can focus on the transaction, but there's a couple of things that can make it skew. I think we need to, as a sector, explore. Firstly, is appetite to risk. Does anyone want to buy a property where there is a risk it's defective or it's not quite right? And we see that a lot with last-minute surveys being booked. you know, I'm due to exchange tomorrow, I need a survey, because all of a sudden I've panicked and I'm now thinking, is this going to be right for me? And there's a real human reality to a lot of this. Lenders relying on data, you know, with upfront information, property logbooks, AVMs and AI. Yeah, they might not need surveyor valuers to go in, but you still need that fresh data to keep the algorithm working. Otherwise, it just becomes a churn and could have sort of false information, if you like. And lenders really want to know, you know, does it exist? Is it worth, you know, what's it worth, and will it continue to be worth that for the mortgage terms? And so I think the lender sector is going to drive actually a lot of this, and there'll be a knock-on effect for the rest of us. But you still need someone with the eyes and ears to go out to a property, at least in part or in some measure, because we've got to learn to trust the public. And as we know, we all tweak and do things to our homes. There's skills and knowledge. You know, identifying materials and construction and defects, that's a skill, which means we have a skills shortage. You know, how is that all going to work? And information is not advice. You know, what do you do with that information? You know, and just because it's written down, it comes back to that sort of human reality. What do you do with it? And as surveying professionals, we've got to, you know, when we provide our reports and advice, we've got to think about context and purpose. What is somebody going to do with that? And so that raises questions as to, for us, what goes into that upfront information, what goes into that potential upfront survey, but then what's the mechanism as to how that is managed too, and that professional advice that comes with it. So there's consequences with lots of this, and we don't have all of the answers yet, but we've got to be working towards at least discussing it and testing and trialing and seeing what comes up. And for me, I think it's about the hook. You know, for consumer, what's the hook? Is it the speed to be able to do things quicker, the money, the certainty? But we're in a cost of living crisis. Accessibility is massive. You know, not just in terms of physical means. You're talking about safety, you know, our future security, sustainability and climate is huge. People are thinking about these things. You know, I was listening to, I went to an event recently, and Octopus were talking about a project they'd had about zero bills homes. So building properties where there's no electricity bill. You know, people are starting to explore and look at these different things. So we've got to also think then about our marketing of it. You know, how we market it and buy these properties, what message, these properties on the market, what messages are we sending to people? You know, are we highlighting any of these risks, and do we do that well or not? But there's also then lots of consequences, I think, for surveyors and conveyancers in a very similar way. And we've talked about accountability. You know, if we can't all pull this together, yes, there will be accountability, but that needs to be consistent. You know, conveyancers and surveyors are very familiar with claims. I don't think estate agents have the same, you know, the same rules, the same consequences yet. You know, we've talked about HIPs, and, you know, love them or hate it, you know, whatever the plan was, it was an idea that somebody ran with, but we are 20 plus years away from that now. That's 20 years of thinking, data, technology, doing things differently. But you know what? We've also got 20 years of hurt. You know, a lot of surveyors really struggled, and I'm sure conveyancers, and we've got to get over that. You know, that's 20 years ago. We've got to make that our peace with that, and look at, well, what can we do to move forward? Because really, it does come back to the whole purpose. What's the reason that we're doing this? And that's that hook. Is it because we want to do it quicker, faster, make money, security, etc.? And how do we translate that through to the consumer to make them want to do this? And there's a question I think we need to ask ourselves is, why does somebody spending all of this money take such a risk? And what are we doing to help them with that? You know, why on earth would nobody get property advice, legal advice, you know, all the things that you need to? And that's the thing I think we have a responsibility as professionals to try and hone in on. you know, like others have said, you know, that all said, you know, there are some surveyors who are thinking, you know, this could be the end, but I think it's a huge opportunity. But when you've got an opportunity, it means you've got to do things differently, like how we market properties, how we talk to consumers, how we talk to each other. We don't all love each other a lot of the time. You know, look at those negatives and let's find solutions to it. We talk about minimum standards, but are we demonstrating best practice? You know, why are there low fees and what can we do about that? I almost feel like I want to pull everybody together and say, you know, it's time for Avengers to assemble. You know, we are the team that help people with their homes and their lives, and we need to get our act together and learn to collaborate. And we can do that in different ways. You know, we can do that with conveyancers reaching out to surveyors and vice versa, and to talk about, you know, what do you do? How do you do it? How can we do it better for our clients? You know, same with estate agents. We can't actually talk to each other. Yes, we've got professional boundaries and things to navigate, but we can talk to each other for the common good. And then there's also those who are waiting to be told what to do, you know, or need that guidance from organisations, professional bodies and the like. So there are lots of different ways that we can, you know, that we can plug into this, identify the disparities, work it through. But for me, it just comes back to this: well, what's the purpose? What's the goal? And surely it's got to be, you know, to do with, you know, the risk of things going wrong and making it a better experience ultimately for clients and consumers. Just get that off my chest there.
Thanks, Marion. I hope you feel better. There were some great motivational comments there. The only thing I would take issue with is, please don't make me feel any older than I am. HIPs were not 20 plus years ago, they were 14 years ago. So let's just put that one to one side.
Well, I say that because I did my dissertation on HIPs, you know, in 2001, I think it was, and I've got 3 floppy disks. I'm sure they have the answers to all our solutions on 3 floppy disks somewhere.
I'm not sure you're making me feel any better, but I was pro HIP. Pretty much everybody knows that. I set up a HIP production business with OEA Straker. We were producing HIPs that was as exchange ready as possible, and they were helping transaction times. Now, I know they were scrapped, and in a way they had to go. This is not a HIP. This is completely different. It's much better. Please run with it. Mike has put up a question or a statement saying mandating a property logbook as a permanent and ongoing record of transactions would surely help the wider process. They would also make sharing data simple between interested parties. Just one point on that. I think at 1 o'clock today, part of National Conveyancing Week, there is a property logbook panel session. So go to the National Conveyancing Week website and register if you want to watch that at 1 o'clock. Does any of the panelists have any comments on property logbooks at the moment? One at a time. Marion first, and then we'll come to you, Kate, to finish off anyway. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll go. Just in terms of logbooks, it's like anything. You know, what do you put in? You know, but I think it's a real opportunity in terms of sustainability and climate, which we're not really factoring into a lot of this, which we should. You know, if we think about the materials that are in there, how they can be reused, you know, the improvements that consumers have made. You know, we're seeing that on commercial buildings side of things, but that's a huge opportunity for residential. The difficulty is, I think, is that some of the improvements that people like to make, you know, are can be a bit tricky. You know, there are some firms out there, you know, you have injection, this, that, and the other, and you get a guarantee, and then the firm goes bust. You know, the energy efficiency side of things that we're seeing are potentially the defects of the future, but at least it gives us a trial. But from a consumer point of view, you know, things like just putting up thick curtains actually makes quite a bit of difference. You know, and they'll see, you know, what they see as improvements is not necessarily what goes in a logbook. So I think there'll be a similar discussion, but I think that it's hugely beneficial in educating consumers, because then they get to see, you know, what goes in a property.
Okay, thanks, Marion. And last but certainly not least, Kate. I hope we've left you enough time, Kate. I don't mean that in a bad way. As chair of the Home Buying and Selling Group, do you see the introduction of the material information guidance as a first start to improving the home buying and selling process? And if so, do you expect it to be a catalyst for further improvement?
Yeah, it's a real quick one. Yes. There we go.
Come on, Kate, you've got more than that. I know that.
Right. So I have actually, thank you. All I can say is what I love is all your questions. They are absolutely fantastic. And what we've done here in the last hour and with all of the questions you've got is literally what we have been doing in the Home Buying and Selling Group over the last 5 years, with everybody involved in the process, from lender through to removal company, with the likes of trading standards, with all the redress, the regulators, the professional, the trade bodies, but most importantly, practitioners. Because I know, unless you work with people on the ground, forget introducing anything. I was in sales, and the ivory tower of people that told us what to do was pretty useless. So we have, it is like a mini version of the Home Buying and Selling Group, all of these Q&As that we've got. And we've mentioned history a little bit. I can't tell you the amount of time we have spent learning why everything else has failed, because we knew that we wouldn't be successful until we did that first. And we have a lot of people on the group with great history, but also what's nice is we have people coming into the market from who bought a property or haven't even bought yet from yesterday. And we think whether you've got 30 years in the business or whether you just want to buy a home, we don't care. You're as important, and what you think is as important. Just to cut my kind of, I've rewritten the first half of my presentation based on your questions. So the one problem that we have is material information is not a silver bullet, but let me explain where it kind of sits. We have put out our paper, our discussion paper, and thank you for those that fed back to us. We have 24 recommendations to change the way that we buy and sell a home, and they're all needed to make it right. We've split them into 3 parts. We have what you can do now, of which material information is incredibly important. And it's why a catalyst, because it's the one thing on a what you can do now that everybody has to do and has to get on with. So that is massive. We have a how to digitize data in the future to make buying and selling easier, from lender through to removal company, and obviously we're chatting about that later. And the final bit is we need help from government. We can't do this ourselves because we can't have 1, 2 or 3 properties doing what's required to improve the process. So, and to answer one of the questions in there, one of the things we are asking for is mandation of the likes of property books, legal packs to sell a home upfront, etc. So it is a substantial task. We also have 3 other groups. We're working on sustainability, where we have a leasehold group because of the problems there. Beth and I and many others on here gave evidence in January to the committee, which helped with some of the amendments coming through. And we also are getting involved with a shared ownership group. So we are now bringing in housing associations. So literally, we're trying to get everybody there. But please understand, that's something like over 100 organisations, even up to 150. That has taken time, and every single one of those organisations and people has to be listened to, and that's been a massive task, but it's been one that's been hugely successful. And what we have to do and what we fail to do, and this is one of the reasons why I think things have failed in the past, and we want to make it a smooth process for everybody in the future, is it's a bit like building safety, which I know is a tricky topic. When somebody introduces building safety, when we have a shock like Japanese knotweed, when we have material information coming in, we have to map out and go, right, from lender through to removal company, how do we integrate this into the home buying and selling process? And that's what we're going through now, and partly why this meeting is so important, because we have to educate the industry, but we also have to get out to every single consumer. And that is the reason why the material information is such a catalyst, because in all the years that we've been doing this and trying to change, we can now introduce a plan. And do you know what? Once we crack how we share the material information responsibilities from lender through to removal company, we will then also be able to deliver the 200 plus questions on the BASPI, because we'll have worked out how to work together to integrate changes into the buying and selling process. And that's why this is such a catalyst. From a consumer perspective, it's massive, because, and this is such a lovely thing, whoever thought that trading standards, and a lot of that's down to the amazing work that Emma and James have done, would be standing side by side with the industry going, right, folks, how can we educate consumers together? How can we make sure that information is consistent? How can we make sure everybody knows about it? And although at the moment we can't get ROPA, regulation for agents, I know we will. We are going to be getting that. One of the things that we can do now, and I feel as somebody that works with consumers, but thanks to all this work, is we could start talking to the media going, did you know that although agents aren't regulated, if you ask them if they understand about material information, and they do, they're probably an okay agent to go with. And if they don't know what you're talking about, probably I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. And that gives us an opportunity, all of us, including yourselves, to sort the good guys out from the bad. So the reason it's such a catalyst is this is the first chance that we've had to formally set up a system, a bit like I describe it as the Cobra meeting that governments have. We need something like that to set it up so that we can work through from start to finish. And that's why all your questions are important, because the only way we'll get this right is for you telling us now what you're worried about, what your fears are, how you can help, but also understanding that over the next year, 2 years and 5 years when other things hit our system. And what we've got to do is work out, what info do the buyers need? We've got somewhere on that. They don't know they need that. We know that, but we've got a chance to educate them. When do they need it? What part of the process? Who should be supplying it? And how can everybody trust that data from lender through to removal company when they finish? And we've moved in amazing steps. We've got agents that are already delivering this. We've got ones that are working on how to deliver it. And we've got loads of different ways to deliver it. We did a group the other week. We had the lenders talking about how they're delivering it. We've got some agents delivering it for free. I'm having to look down because there's so many different ways of delivering it. We've got third-party providers that deliver specific information. We've got legal packs, property logbooks, and we've got these amazing case studies, legal companies and agents working hand in hand, even introducing reservation agreements. Legals are all done up front, and then the property is sold. And it's wiped out all of the problems with sales fall-throughs, not everyone, but most of them. And also it's speeded up the process. We know there are some issues. We're working on every single one of those. But this is the starting process for us understanding as an industry, how do we change this? And how do we, once we've cracked material information between us, then we can solve, we'll have a way of solving everything else. And that's an amazing step forward. And we've never, ever got this far as working so well, not just as an industry, but hand in hand with government who support that we have. So, yeah, I'm super pleased. And I know it's a pain in the butt for everybody, but it's really, really going to be worth it.
Thanks, Kate. I just want to correct myself on something I said earlier. Actually, the property logbook session is at 11:30, straight after this one, until 1 p.m. So if you can't make that and you haven't registered for it, all of these sessions will be recorded and will be made available later during the week and after the week has ended. I'm just looking at the questions again in the chat, and they're coming in thick and fast. You're all asking them, replying to them faster than I can read them. But I think what I might try and do at the end of this is put together a Q&A document of the more relevant questions and more relevant answers, and see if we can put that document out to everybody. So just going back to the whole panel now, having listened to what you've all said, having read some of the things in the chat, have you got a few final comments for us to listen to about material information and why we should be embracing it? Let's start with you, please, Emma.
It's a really good question to ask. I think it's really worth bearing in mind that I don't think material information is going to go away. That's something that people really need to bear in mind. It is something that is required already. As I say, it's nothing new. It's not a new concept at all. It's something that's been in place since 2008. I want to obviously really emphasize the point I think that Nathan made earlier. You know, we're not asking agents to become conveyancers or surveyors. What we're asking is for earlier engagement with those people. You are all specialists in your field, and consequently, together you can achieve a lot more greater things rather than just operating in your own little silos. So I think that's really fundamental. And also, you know, as I say, I continue to learn all the time. Every day I learn different things, and I'm not an expert in everything, and nor would I want to be, because my life would be really boring. But I just think I get to integrate and interact with lots of great people, like some of the panelists on this panel now, and that is what makes my life interesting, and I think it's always for the greater good. I learn all the time from lots of different experts, and together, as I say, collaboratively, we can achieve great things. And I think that is fundamentally the message. You need to start engaging with your agents. You need to start engaging with clients. And as I say, education is the golden thread throughout, not just for industry, and it's also for consumers. And so consumers will start to want to engage earlier with their conveyancer or surveyor. So the next 12 months are going to be very exciting, very busy. We'll be really interested this time next year, the next National Conveyancing Week, the conversations we'll be having in 12 months.
Please don't talk about next year. I'm still coping with this year's Conveyancing Week. Oh God, you just aged me again, Emma.
I didn't mean it on purpose, Rob.
Beth, any few final comments from yourself about what we've seen and heard today? Are you feeling more positive or less positive?
No, it's all good, because it's really fabulous. I've been looking through the chat, and actually there's nothing in there yet. I'm saying yet that we haven't already looked at and done all the research on, and there's a shed load of data which you can rely on. You know, for example, Office of National Statistics provides data that has enabled me to answer a lot of these questions. So the good news is there's nothing on there that is an unintended consequence of what is coming down the line. And at the end of the day, if you think 27,000 auctions exchange contracts on Hammerfall because the legal pack is ready, and I know a lot of the comments are going, oh, but nobody tells the buyer about that. But the point is that it can legally exchange contracts with the right information for compliance purposes, because it is all there. Now, what would be better with the material information, upfront information, is actually for that information to be gathered and reviewed by the seller's conveyancer. And we need to break down that expectation on buyer beware. You know, when you look at the Law Society's Conveyancing Handbook, it makes it very clear that sellers can be providing the searches up front in contract packs, that buyer beware still applies. So you don't need to be frightened. Just crack on and do it. Get your relationship going with your local estate agents. And for the Conveyancing Association members, Taylor and Emmett, who have done this, oh my word, their transaction times are on average half the time of the average transaction, and in most cases around 5 weeks. So it is well worth doing.
Yeah, and on that point, I was talking to a firm last week. I don't think they'll mind me naming them, Watson Ramsbottom, who've been working with their agents on this, and they say their transaction times have dropped dramatically because they're working with them on material information. It just needs an open mind and some proactive thinking, I think. Nathan, any final comments from yourself? Have you been pleased with what you've seen and heard today, or otherwise?
Absolutely. I think there's some great comments, some good challenges, some identification of areas that we all need to think about. I think the thing I would probably reiterate is this is an opportunity for me, for conveyancers, to actually get involved earlier in the conversation, to be a lot more involved with the agents that fundamentally are a great funnel of business for you if you engage in work with them. Don't work with them, then you're going to have a different route, because they need to put the properties on the market. They are going to find an alternative route. if you don't work with them. But if you do work with them, I think there's opportunities there, both from conveyancers and surveyors as well, and also probably even financial services being pulled into this a little bit earlier. So we are on a cusp of change. I think I would say probably the biggest risk does sit with agents. They've got a lot of thought and upskilling to do to make sure they're bringing in the component parts at the right areas. We do need more support from the CRM systems, integrating to make it a bit more seamless. And so we are going to go through a period of change. Change is frightening, but change can be exciting. So I think when we get through the other side, the models that come out of this will be interesting. But what I would urge everybody to do is not just say, right, this is how we've done it, we're never changing what we do. Think about where actually you can benefit from this and be a bigger part of the conversation, because I think sometimes conveyancers at the back end to a transactions from both the consumer and from an agent's point of view, in a weird way, you're there once that transaction's been agreed, as to the surveyors. It would be great to have you involved in the conversation earlier on. And please, if I was going to add one more thing into this, please make sure you are keeping in touch with the agents, communicating with them and building with them, because that helps everybody get a more harmonious relationship and a faster transaction.
Thanks, Nathan. I do agree with you 100%. Conveyancers should get involved with their agents now. There will be other suppliers out there who will help them with this issue, and they won't all be conveyancer friendly. So get involved now while you can, I think. Marion, any more final points from yourself?
I think just to acknowledge that a lot of it is really uncomfortable. As professionals in our own work, we can see this as a threat. Some of the questions that have been put in are quite challenging. I know, from other people I've spoken to, tensions can get quite high. But this is not going away. Material information is not going away. There are good reasons behind it. We live in a world where people are dying in fires and children are dying because of mold inhalation and things like that. We've got to come back to the purpose of this and believe that there are ways that, believe in the power of possibility. There are ways forward of all of this. There are some difficult stuff. There is some uncomfortable stuff. There are things that we might need to ask ourselves, but it is absolutely possible for us all to get together and to work out how to move this forward, and that is a good thing. So it was just really to acknowledge that, and I see that totally with surveyors, because we're on the back foot. We're not always at the forefront of the conversation or included. We'll be dealing with all the queries and different things that come out to you. So I totally get it. But it's believing that it's possible. And if you've got really strong views, get involved. Quite simply, that's how I got involved. I had a big enough mouth to be annoyed and got involved. But that's how you make a difference either way.
Absolutely, and I think everybody on this panel and myself, we're all accessible. Our email addresses are out there. If you're not, email me and I'll pass all your email addresses on to everybody. Kate, any few last words?
Yeah, we're making a lot of changes to the way the home buying and selling group works this year. And one of them is we're in a position now, we've got our 24 recommendations out there of what we want to do. And this year is about how do we trial and test those? What help do you need? What companies can you work with? We've steered away from anything to do with commercials because I know how sensitive that is now. But now that we're in this situation, we will always, and for example, material information, when we talked about that and involved companies, there were 8 different ones. None of them were allowed to do a sales pitch at all. They had to use a template that had been carefully set up to do that. But we have already agreed the topics for this year. We're going to be, our next meeting is 1 p.m. moves. If you would like to come, we do have a little bit of a limit on it. We can go up to about 150 people based on the license that we have. We normally get about 60 or 70 on that. But even if you don't want to come to the meetings, talk to me. I've learned so much from you guys this morning, and all of that stuff helps. And like Beth says, there aren't any surprises in there, but what I can see, which is what I've got already on the home buying selling group, is loads of people that really care They really care and they want to make a change. And if that's you, I want you to help me to do that, and everybody else with our consumer material and everything. So we've got 1 PM moves. We want things like getting buyers qualified before viewing, instructing a legal company day one of marketing, and dealing with digital identity. So if those are things that you would love to look at, please let me know. We'll add you to the list. Come to one of our meetings. They're online. They go from 12:30 till 2 PM. So we've tried to do it at lunch times because I need your help, basically, and we all do. And also just a massive thank you to the panelists on here, because we wouldn't have got anywhere as far as we have without them, and they've been incredible. So thank you very much, guys. We don't get the opportunity, and thank you to you for all of your fabulous questions.
What about me, Kate?
You're on here.
No, I'm not the panelist though. Oh, okay, don't worry. Don't worry about me, Kate.
Flipping heck. See what I have to deal with? Can you imagine? And how have I got?
It's all about you, Rob.
We got 2 minutes. But I just want to state where I stand. I think most people know. I've been in this business 50 years this year. It was quicker, easier, and less stressful in the 20th century. Conveyancers have a very tough time of it now. And I'm suffering some sort of survivor's guilt because I enjoyed my time at the coalface. I want things to improve for conveyancers. I want things to improve for the consumer and estate agents and surveyors and everybody else. So please look at this with open eyes, not a negative view. I'd just like to say now, look, thank you to the panelists for taking time out today. It's been a long time. You've done a great job. Thanks very much. Thank you to the listeners. Apologies if we haven't answered all your questions.
Rob, can I do a quick shout out?
Oh, it's not your birthday.
Sorry, Rob. I just wanted to say, no. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to everybody. There's the Digital Property Market Steering Group survey is going out this week to capture everybody's thoughts on what we can do to improve their home moving process and to digitize and what data needs to digitize. So please keep an eye out for that, because all of the people with these brilliant questions, we need the DPMSG to see that as well. So that's coming out this week.
I think, Beth, it's just as well my image has gone down because you can't see me how I reacted when you interrupted me then. But it was a nice smile, I'm sure. I just want to say thank you, panelists. Thank you, listeners. Please continue to engage with National Conveyancing Week. And if you are opening up your offices for the coffee morning on Wednesday, have a great time. Thanks very much. Goodbye. See you soon.